The prince hired a pregnant maid, but he froze when she said her name. A woman steps into a candlelit hall, her hands on her swollen belly. The prince's goblet slips from his hand. She wasn't just any servant. She carried the weight of a ruined family, and a secret that could tear the crown apart. Whispers ripple through a banquet. Nobles smirk. A stern dowager's voice echoes. Dismiss her, or lose your honor. But instead of sending her away, he stood by her side. Thunder of hooves. The rival's shadow falls across the doorway, and then her unborn child's father walked in, his own cousin. Gasps. A knife scrapes across a plate. The maid flees into the snow. Will love redeem a prince, or destroy him forever? Church bells rise. Screen fades to black. Comment below and tell me where in the world you're joining from. And if this story made you pause for a moment, hit that subscribe button for more. Autumn painted the black forest in rich golds and crimsons, the morning air sharp with the promise of winter. Prince Leopold stood on the stone steps of his hunting lodge, watching servants hurry about their tasks in preparation for the coming season. The scent of wood smoke curled from the chimney, mixing with the earthy fragrance of fallen leaves. Your Highness. Steward Heinrich approached with a slight bow, his practical brown coat buttoned against the chill. The new laundress has arrived. Shall I show her in? Leopold nodded absently, his thoughts already drifting to the day's hunt. Yes, yes. See that she's properly settled. He expected nothing more than another ordinary servant, perhaps some widow from the village, or a farmer's daughter seeking better wages. The crunch of cartwheels on the gravel drive drew his attention. A farmer's wooden cart, drawn by a sturdy draft horse, rolled to a stop before the lodge. The driver, a weather-worn man in rough homespun, helped his passenger down with careful hands. She stepped onto the gravel with quiet grace. Despite her advanced state, even heavy with child, her movements held a dignity that caught Leopold's eye. Her dress was plain but clean, her dark hair neat beneath a simple cap. Nothing remarkable until she spoke. I am Anna of Falkenwald, Your Highness. Her curtsy was careful, measured to accommodate her condition. I've come about the laundress position. The name struck Leopold like a physical blow. Falkenwald. The mill by the river, its wheel now silent and rotting. The miller who had dared protest the crown's new grain taxes, his father's harsh decree, seizing the prosperous mill and leaving its owner with nothing. Leopold's fingers tightened on his riding crop as memories flooded back. He had been there that day, standing silent beside his father as the miller and his family were driven out. The miller's daughter, this woman before him now, had been barely more than a girl then, watching with dry eyes as her world crumbled. Now, she stood before him again, her face composed though her eyes held shadows of old pain. She met his gaze steadily, neither accusing nor pleading. Her hands, work-roughened but elegant, rested protectively over the swell of her child. Your references? Leopold managed, his voice stiffer than he intended. From the village priest and the innkeeper's wife, Your Highness. She produced the folded papers from her modest bag. I can wash and mend fine linens, and I know how to remove hunting stains from woolens. Heinrich stepped forward to take the papers, his expression carefully neutral. We'll need someone strong enough for the work in your condition. I am stronger than I look, Anna replied simply, and I need the wages. The words held no self-pity, only quiet determination. Leopold found himself unable to look away from her face, searching for the accusation he deserved to find there. But Anna's expression remained composed, revealing nothing of her thoughts as she waited for his decision. See to her quarters, he ordered Heinrich abruptly, and ensure she has what she needs. Without waiting for a response, he turned and strode into the lodge, his boots echoing on the stone floor. In his private chamber, Leopold paced before the window, his face pale and troubled. The hunting plans forgotten, he struggled with the ghost of past wrongs now embodied in the woman below. His father's justice had always seemed harsh, but necessary, until faced with its consequences in flesh and blood. Above, in a small attic room that smelled of lavender and fresh straw, Anna knelt beside her narrow bed. Her prayers were simple ones, for strength to carry her child to term, for work enough to feed them both, for shelter until spring at least. She did not pray for justice or revenge or even understanding from the man whose father had destroyed her family. Such prayers, she had learned, went unanswered. The afternoon light slanted through her tiny window, touching the rough wooden walls with gold. Below, she could hear the bustle of the lodge settling into its evening routine. The clatter of pots from the kitchen, the stamp of horses in the stable, servants calling to one another across the yard. This would be her world now. For as long as she could keep her place here, for her child's sake, she would endure whatever came. Dawn crept over the forest, painting the sky in streaks of pale rose and gold. Anna stood at the brook's edge, her breath forming delicate clouds in the crisp morning air. Her fingers, red from the icy water, worked methodically at the linens. The rushing stream nearly drowned out her soft humming, an old miller's song her father once taught her. From his chamber window above, Prince Leopold watched her unseen. The sight of her stirred memories he had long tried to forget. The day his father's men had stormed the Falkenwald mill, the miller's desperate pleas falling on deaf ears. Now, here stood the miller's daughter, heavy with child, washing his linens in the bitter cold. He turned from the window, pacing the richly carpeted floor. The proper course would be to dismiss her immediately. Her presence threatened to stir up old scandals best left buried. Yet something in her quiet dignity the day before had moved him. She had not begged or accused, though she had every right. "Fetch Steward Morris," he commanded a passing footman. When the elderly steward arrived, Leopold's decision was made. "The new laundress, Anna. I want her assigned solely to my personal household. See that she is not overtaxed in her condition." "As you wish, Your Highness." Morris bowed. "Though, if I may say, she has already refused offers of lighter duties this morning." Leopold's jaw tightened. "Then do not present it as charity. Tell her it is my direct command." Throughout the morning, whispers of the prince's unusual interest in a mere laundress rippled through the servants' quarters. Anna paid them no mind, going about her work with careful attention. In the kitchen, she paused at the sound of shouting. A young boy, no more than 12, was throwing potatoes across the room while the cook threatened him with a wooden spoon. "Here now," Anna said softly, approaching the boy. "What troubles you so?" The boy glared, another potato raised. "They mock my stammering, say I'm too stupid to work here." Anna knelt beside him, despite her swollen belly making it difficult. "I once knew a baker's boy who stammered terribly. Now he's the finest speaker in his village, leading the harvest prayers each autumn. Would you like to learn his secret?" The boy lowered the potato, nodding hesitantly. Soon he was practicing tongue twisters with Anna, his earlier rage forgotten. Later, when a servant girl rushed in, crying over a torn apron, certain to earn her a scolding, Anna produced a needle and thread from her pocket. With quick, neat stitches, she mended the tear so skillfully it was nearly invisible. As evening settled over the lodge, Leopold summoned Anna to his private supper chamber. Candles cast warm light over the simple meal laid out far more modest than the usual princely fare. Anna curtsied carefully at the door. "Your Highness wished to see me?" "Yes." Leopold gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. In your condition, you should not stand unnecessarily." Anna hesitated before taking the offered seat. "You are most kind, my lord, but I require no special treatment." "I witnessed your kindness today," Leopold said, studying her face in the candlelight. "With the kitchen boy and the maid, such gentle wisdom is rare." "Simple things, my lord. My father taught me that every soul deserves patience." Her voice held no accusation, but Leopold flinched slightly at the mention of her father. "I would hear more of these lessons if you are willing to share them." His words were careful, measured. Anna's hands folded carefully in her lap. "Perhaps another time, Your Highness. I hear your guests arriving now." Indeed, through the windows came the sound of carriage wheels crunching on gravel. accompanied by gay laughter and calling voices. The noise seemed to underscore the vast divide between their worlds. "Of course," Leopold nodded, understanding her need to withdraw. "Good evening, Anna of Falkenwald." "Good evening, Your Highness." Anna climbed the narrow stairs to her attic room, the sounds of the arriving nobility floating up from below. Their refined voices and elegant carriages belonged to a world she had once brushed against before her father's ruin. Now, as she settled onto her simple straw bed, those sounds served as a reminder of how far she had fallen and how dangerously close those two worlds were becoming once again. The great hall buzzed with activity as noble guests gathered for the morning's hunt. Candlelight flickered across polished oak panels, while servants scurried between tables, carrying platters heaped with steaming game. Anna kept her eyes lowered as she moved among the richly dressed courtiers, her hands steady despite her growing child's weight as she served portions of venison. The meat's rich aroma filled the air, mixing with wood smoke from the hearths and the sharp scent of wine. Anna's simple gray dress marked her as a servant among the noble's vibrant silks and velvets. She focused on her task, letting the chatter of dozens of voices wash over her like distant rain. "More wine, if you please," called a gentleman in emerald green, not bothering to look at her as she filled his cup. His companion, sporting an elaborate white wig, leaned close to whisper, though not quietly enough, "Have you noticed how our prince coddles the servants?" The man's lips curled in distaste, especially the pretty ones. "Mark my words, such softness ill suits an heir." The old duke would never have permitted such familiarity. "Indeed," the first man replied with a smirk, "though perhaps he simply follows his father's example in other ways." His meaningful glance at Anna's condition made her cheeks burn, though she kept her face carefully blank. Anna retreated to the kitchens, her heart pounding. The noble's words stung, not for herself, but for Leopold. She had seen nothing but proper dignity in his treatment of the staff, yet these men twisted kindness into weakness. Later that afternoon, she found herself in the stables where Leopold's prized hunting hound lay whimpering, its paw swollen from a thorn. Without thinking, she knelt beside the animal, murmuring softly as she examined the wound. "You seem to have a way with him." Leopold's voice came from behind her. "Usually he won't let anyone near when he's hurting." Anna dipped her head respectfully. "Your Grace, I know some herb craft from my father's mill. The shepherds often brought their dogs to us." She hesitated. "With your permission, I could make a poultice to draw out the swelling." Leopold's face softened with genuine interest. "Please, do what you can for him. I've always found it remarkable how much wisdom passes through country households." Before Anna could reply, a commotion erupted in the courtyard. The clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestones announced an arrival, followed by the sharp rap of a walking stick on stone. "Where is my son?" The Dowager Duchess's voice cut through the air like winter frost. "Leopold, what is this I hear about your household?" Anna's stomach tightened as heavy footsteps approached the stable. The Duchess appeared in the doorway, her tall figure blocking the light. Her steel-gray hair was perfectly arranged beneath a black lace cap, her dark silk dress rustling as she took in the scene before her. The Duchess's eyes narrowed, moving from Leopold to Anna and lingering on her condition. "So, the gossip reaches even my estate." Her voice could have frozen water. "A common laundress, heavy with child, employed in my son's personal household. Have you lost all sense of propriety, mother?" Leopold began. "Miss Falkenwald is a capable—" "Falkenwald?" The Duchess's spine stiffened further. "The miller's daughter? Even worse. Leopold, you will dismiss her at once. I will not have our name tarnished by such associations." Anna backed away, one hand pressed to her stomach, where her child had begun to stir restlessly. She hurried through the winding corridors to her attic chamber, but even there, she could not escape the Duchess's commanding voice floating up from below. "This ends now, Leopold. Dismiss the girl, or I shall be forced to take matters to your father's council. Think of your position, your duty to the family name." Anna sank onto her narrow bed, her child's movements matching her own trembling. She had known this position was too good to last, had known the past would eventually catch up with her. Yet in her heart, she had begun to hope that perhaps here, in this quiet corner of the forest, she might find a measure of peace before her child came. Now, listening to the Duchess's stern demands echo through the lodge, that hope felt as fragile as autumn frost in morning Sunday. Frost painted delicate patterns on the dining hall windows as morning light filtered through. The Dowager Duchess sat rigid at the head table, her silver-streaked hair perfectly arranged beneath a lace cap. Her stern gaze swept over the assembled breakfast, gathering like a winter wind. "Your Grace," she addressed Leopold, her voice carrying across clinking silverware and hushed conversations. "I trust you have considered my counsel regarding the unsuitable servant girl." Anna stood near the sideboard, her hands steady as she arranged fresh bread on a silver tray, though her heart thundered in her chest. The morning air felt thick with tension as nobles paused their eating to watch the scene unfold. "Indeed, mother, I have given it considerable thought," Leopold replied, his voice firm yet respectful. He rose from his seat, commanding attention without raising his voice. "And I must inform you that Anna of Falkenwald remains under my protection and employment." Gasps rippled through the assembled nobles. A lady's fan snapped open sharply, while whispers rustled like autumn leaves across the hall. The Duchess's face hardened, her fingers tightening around her silver spoon. "You defy me in this?" she asked, each word precise as cut crystal. "I do." Leopold stood straighter, his shoulders squared. "What was done to her family was unjust. I will not compound that wrong by casting her out." Anna felt the weight of every stare in the room. Some nobles watched with barely concealed scandal, others with open curiosity. She forced herself to continue her work, though her cheeks burned with mingled shame and gratitude. Later that morning, she found Leopold in the empty library, sunlight streaming through dusty windows onto leather-bound books. "Your Highness," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I must beg you, do not risk your position for my sake." Leopold turned from the window, his face shadowed with concern. "This is not mere pity, Miss Falkenwald. It is about justice." "Justice? Justice?" Anna's hand unconsciously moved to her swollen belly. "What justice can there be when your very inheritance may be threatened? The court already whispers." "Let them whisper," Leopold said firmly. "I cannot right every wrong my father committed, but this I can do." Throughout the day, rumors spread like wildfire through the lodge. In the kitchen, servants huddled in corners, their voices low but urgent. "The prince defied the Duchess herself for her sake," a scullery maid whispered. "Mark my words, there's more to this tale than meets the eye." In the great hall, courtiers gathered in small clusters, fans fluttering as they exchanged knowing looks. "How very like his father," one nobleman smirked. Though at least the old duke kept his dalliances discreet. Anna felt the weight of their judgment pressing in from all sides. Even the familiar tasks of folding linens and preparing herbs offered little comfort. Every sideways glance, every suddenly silenced conversation when she entered a room, struck like tiny arrows. As evening descended, she sought refuge in the small chapel. Candles flickered in their iron rack, casting dancing shadows on stone walls. Anna knelt before the rack, her fingers trembling as she lit a fresh taper. "Grant me wisdom," she whispered, watching the flame steady itself. "Show me the path that protects both my child and the prince who has shown such kindness." Unknown to her, Leopold stood in the shadowed doorway, watching her quiet devotion. The candlelight caught the silver threads in her dark hair, the careful way she folded her hands over her growing child. His expression softened with an emotion he dared not name, even to himself. A cold draft whispered through the chapel, making the candles dance. Anna remained lost in prayer, her lips moving silently, while Leopold lingered in the darkness, unable to step forward or retreat, caught between duty and the stirrings of his heart. Thick snowflakes drifted past the hunting lodge's frost-covered windows. The sudden storm had caught everyone by surprise. turning the autumn morning into a winter wonderland. Servants hurried through drafty corridors, their arms laden with firewood and heavy blankets. The clatter of their footsteps mixed with the whistle of wind through the eaves. "Mind that leak," called the housekeeper, pointing to water dripping from a corner of the great hall's ceiling. Two young men scrambled up with rags and buckets, while others rushed to protect tapestries from the dampness. In Prince Leopold's private chamber, Anna knelt before the massive stone hearth, carefully arranging logs to keep the flames strong and steady. The warmth seeped into her bones, a welcome respite from the chill that seemed to creep through every crack. She heard soft footsteps behind her and turned to see Leopold entering, his hunting clothes dusted with snow. "The storm shows no sign of letting up," he said, removing his gloves. "It seems our guests will remain longer than planned." He paused, watching her work. "You need not tend my fire yourself, Anna. There are others who could do this task." "'Tis no burden, your highness," she replied, though her back ached as she stood. The babe within her stirred, as if agreeing. Leopold's eyes held a distant look. "I remember you, you know, from years ago, at your father's mill." His voice grew quiet. "The day the royal decree was carried out." Anna's hand stilled on her apron. "I remember as well," she said softly. "I was but 16. I thought my heart would break, watching everything we had built crumble away." "I wanted to speak against it," Leopold admitted, "but I was young, and my father's word was law." He moved closer to the fire, its light casting shadows across his troubled face. "Not a day passes that I don't regret my silence." Anna studied him, seeing not the prince who had stood silent that day, but the man who now carried that burden. "Perhaps we both were trapped by circumstances beyond our control," she offered. A log shifted in the fire, sending sparks dancing upward. Leopold turned to her. "Would you walk with me to the stables? My favorite hound has taken a limp, and I've seen how gentle you are with the animals." Together they made their way through the snowy courtyard, their boots leaving paired tracks in the fresh white powder. In the warm, hay-scented stables, they found the dog curled in a corner, whimpering softly. Anna knelt beside the animal, her skilled hands moving gently over its leg. "There's no break," she murmured, "just a strain that needs rest and care." She reached for the herbs she kept in her pocket, crushed them between her fingers, and began to massage them into the hound's muscle. Leopold crouched beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. "You have a healer's touch," he said softly. As Anna worked, their hands brushed briefly, sending an unexpected warmth through her that had nothing to do with the stable's shelter from the cold. The dog's whimpers eased, and it licked Anna's hand in gratitude. She smiled, aware of Leopold's gaze upon her face, of the quiet moment they shared in this humble place, far from the watchful eyes of court. But not all eyes were absent. A stable boy mucking stalls paused in his work, watching the prince and the laundress with obvious curiosity. In the doorway, two kitchen maids whispered behind their hands, their eyes wide with speculation. "The prince seems very familiar with the new laundress," one murmured, "and she in such a delicate condition," the other added with a meaningful look. Anna heard their whispers and felt her cheeks warm, but Leopold seemed not to notice or care. He helped her to her feet with gentle courtesy, his hand lingering on her arm a moment longer than strictly necessary. That night, in her small attic room, Anna dreamed of a sunlit cottage, its garden filled with herbs and flowers. In this dream, a child's laughter echoed through bright rooms, and there was no divide between noble and common, no whispers of scandal or shame, just peace and acceptance and love. The dream faded with the peal of chapel bells announcing morning mass. Anna opened her eyes to darkness, the snow still falling beyond her window. The bells rang again, clear and insistent, calling the household to prayer, while her heart still held the warmth of that imagined future. The small chapel's stained glass windows cast colored shadows across the wooden pews as morning light filtered through the falling snow outside. Incense curled through the air, mixing with the scent of burning beeswax candles. Anna sat quietly in the back row with the other servants, her hands folded over her swollen belly. Though she kept her eyes fixed on the altar, she could feel the burning stares of the nobles seated in the front rows. The priest's voice echoed off the stone walls as he led the congregation through familiar prayers. Anna noticed how Leopold, seated in the ornate family pew beside his mother, kept his shoulders straight but his head slightly bowed. The Dowager Duchess maintained perfect posture, her spine rigid as an iron rod. When the offertory began, Leopold did something unprecedented. He rose from his seat, turning to face the congregation. A collective intake of breath whispered through the chapel. Even the priest paused, holding the collection plate uncertainly. "My good people," Leopold began, his voice clear and steady, "I feel moved to speak of what true nobility means." His eyes swept across both nobles and servants alike. "We are taught that nobility flows through bloodlines, passed down through ancient names and titles. But I say to you that true nobility lies in the character of one's heart and the virtue of one's actions." Gasps and whispers rippled through the noble rows. The Duchess's face turned to stone. Anna felt her cheeks burn, knowing his words were meant to defend her presence. A person of common birth who shows kindness, wisdom, and dignity, Leopold continued, holds more genuine nobility than a titled lord who lacks compassion and justice. His gaze briefly met Anna's before returning to address the whole congregation. "This is what our Lord teaches us, to judge not by worldly station but by the quality of one's soul." The chapel remained silent as Leopold resumed his seat. Even the priest seemed unsure how to proceed, fumbling slightly as he continued the service. Anna noticed how the kitchen girls and stable boys sat straighter, their faces glowing with quiet pride. After the final blessing, the Duchess cornered Leopold in the chapel's side chamber. Though Anna could not hear their words clearly through the heavy oak door, the Duchess's sharp tone carried enough for her to catch fragments. "Disgrace, disinheritance, duty to your position." Leopold's response was lower but firm. "Then let it be so, mother. I will not yield on this matter of conscience." As the nobles filed out, several servants lingered near Anna. Young Thomas, a stable boy of barely 12 years, approached her first. "Thank you, miss," he whispered, twisting his cap in his hands. "Never heard anyone speak up for us common folk like that before." Mary from the kitchens nodded eagerly. "Makes us feel like we're worth something, it does. And it's all thanks to you being here, showing such dignity despite." She glanced at Anna's condition but smiled warmly. Anna's heart ached. She had been considering slipping away in the night to spare Leopold from scandal. But these simple words of gratitude rooted her feet to the floor. Perhaps by staying, she served some greater purpose than just earning her bread. The day passed in its usual routine of chores and meals, though the air felt charged with unspoken tensions. As evening approached, servants and nobles gathered in the great hall for supper. The clatter of pewter plates and muted conversations filled the space, along with the crackling of fires that fought against the winter chill. Suddenly, the main doors burst open, letting in a blast of cold air and swirling snow. A messenger stood in the doorway, his cloak crusted with ice, his boots leaving puddles on the stone floor. He strode directly to Prince Leopold's table and bowed deeply. "Your Highness," he announced, loud enough for all to hear, "I bring word that your cousin, Lord Wilhelm, will arrive within the fortnight." He paused to catch his breath. "He sends word that he looks forward to discussing matters of inheritance and succession with you personally." 3 days passed like shadows lengthening across snow. The crunch of wheels on frozen gravel drew servants to peer through frosted windows as a grand procession of carriages wound up the mountain path. Anna stood in the kitchen doorway, her heart thundering against her ribs as she recognized the elaborate crest on the lead carriage, NOC, the personal seal of Count Frederick of Hesse. The Count emerged from his carriage like a cat unfurling in the sun, all grace and predatory awareness. His fine clothes sparkled with silver thread, and his smile gleamed just as bright and just as cold. Anna's hands trembled as she pressed them against her swollen belly, remembering that same smile from months ago, when he had promised her the world. "Cousin," Frederick called out, spreading his arms wide as Leopold descended the lodge steps to greet him. "What a charming retreat you've made of this hunting lodge. Though I hear you keep interesting company these days." Leopold's jaw tightened, but he maintained his princely composure. "Welcome, Frederick. I trust your journey was comfortable?" As servants scurried to unload trunks and cases, Frederick's gaze swept the courtyard until it found Anna. The flash of cruel amusement in his eyes made her breath catch. She retreated into the shadows of the kitchen, but not before she saw him whisper something in Leopold's ear that made the prince frown. Later that afternoon, as Anna carried fresh linens through the empty gallery, a familiar voice froze her in place. "Well, if it isn't the miller's daughter, grown round with consequence." Frederick stood blocking her path, his elegant frame leaning against a wall with calculated casualness. Anna dropped into a curtsy, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My Lord Count." "Come now, Anna. Once you called me Frederick when I visited your father's mill. Before all those unfortunate circumstances." His smile twisted. "Though, I suppose you learned your lesson about trusting a nobleman's promises, didn't you? Pity you had to learn it in such a lasting way." Tears burned behind her eyes, but Anna refused to let them fall. "Please, my lord, let me pass." "Oh, I'll let you pass. But know this, my cousin may play at being your protector now, but when he learns what you truly are—" Frederick's voice dropped to a whisper. "Well, we both know how quickly a nobleman's kindness can turn to contempt." The evening brought worse torment. In the great hall, candles blazed as nobles gathered for supper. Anna tried to blend in with the other servants along the wall, but Frederick's voice cut through the murmur of conversation like a blade. "A toast," he declared, raising his goblet, "to my noble cousin Leopold, whose generous heart provides shelter to those others have cast aside." His meaningful glance toward Anna set tongues wagging. Though some might question such charity towards certain fallen women, whispers rustled through the hall like dead leaves. Anna felt the weight of every stare, the burn of every judgment. Unable to bear it, she fled the hall, her skirts whispering against stone as she ran. "Anna, wait!" Leopold's voice echoed behind her, but she didn't stop until she reached the empty chapel. There, in the flickering light of sanctuary candles, he found her weeping. "Pay no mind to Frederick's cruel words," Leopold said softly, reaching for her hand. "You don't understand." Anna choked out, drawing back. "The child I carry, it's his, Frederick's. He promised me marriage, swore he loved me, then abandoned me when he learned I was with child." The truth spilled out between sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Leopold stood very still, his face pale in the candlelight. But when he spoke, his voice was firm. "It changes nothing. You are under my protection still." But Anna shook her head, backing away. "I cannot let you ruin yourself for me. Your position, your future." Her voice broke. "I must go." In her attic room, hands shaking, Anna packed her few belongings by candlelight. A worn dress, a prayer book, a small pouch of herbs. Tears fell silently as she penned a note of gratitude to Leopold. As the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, she slipped down the servants' stairs and out into the bitter cold, leaving only footprints in the snow to mark her passing. Anna's feet ached with each step along the frozen road. Her breath came in white puffs as she clutched her worn cloak tighter around her swollen belly. The morning sun cast long shadows across the frosted ground, offering little warmth against the biting cold. She had walked for hours, her meager belongings bundled in a small sack. The creak of wooden wheels made her turn. A weathered farm cart approached, pulled by an old mare. The farmer, his face lined with kindness beneath his wool cap, slowed his horse. "Miss, you shouldn't be walking in your condition," he called out. "I'm headed toward Falkenwald, if you'd care for a ride." Grateful tears stung Anna's eyes as she nodded. "God bless you, sir." The farmer helped her onto the rough wooden seat, tucking a blanket around her legs. They traveled in comfortable silence, the cart swaying gently over the rutted road. Anna's thoughts drifted back to Leopold, and her heart clenched. She pressed a hand to her middle, feeling the child move within. Better to leave now, she told herself, than destroy his future. When the farmer let her down at the crossroads, Anna recognized the familiar path to her village. Falkenwald lay before her, a shadow of its former self. The empty mill stood as a stark reminder of her family's ruin, its wheel frozen and silent. Scattered cottages lined the road, thin smoke rising from their chimneys. She found her Aunt Margaretha's small cottage near the edge of the village. The older woman opened her door, her stern face softening at the sight of her niece. "Anna, child, what brings you here in such a state?" Margaretha ushered her inside, where a small fire warmed the single room. Anna sank onto a wooden stool, her legs trembling. "I had to leave, Aunt. I can't stay at the lodge." Her voice broke as she explained about Frederick's arrival and the scandal threatening Leopold. Margaretha's weathered hands stilled in their work of mending. "And the prince? What does he say of all this?" "He offered protection, but I won't be the cause of his ruin." Anna's voice grew firm. "I'll raise this child alone. I need no man's charity." Her aunt's eyes grew sharp. "Pride won't feed a babe, girl. I have my hands, and God's grace," Anna insisted. "I can spin, sew, tend gardens. We will manage." Meanwhile, at the hunting lodge, Leopold stormed into Frederick's chamber, his face dark with fury. The Count lounged by the fire, a wine cup in his hand. "You snake," Leopold spat. "You knew who she was when you arrived." Frederick's lips curled in a mocking smile. "Dear cousin, surely you didn't think to keep her? A common girl carrying another man's bastard?" Leopold's hands clenched into fists. "You destroyed her family, betrayed her trust, and now you mock her suffering? Such passion." Frederick rose, his voice dripping with false concern. "What will the court say? The crown prince, defending a ruined maiden, perhaps even in love with her?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Think carefully, cousin. Your claim to the throne already hangs by a thread. One whisper of scandal." Leopold surged forward, grabbing Frederick's collar. "Speak of her again, and blood ties won't protect you." Frederick merely laughed, even as he knocked Leopold's hands away. "There's the temper that makes the nobles doubt you. Face truth, cousin, you're not fit to rule. Too soft, too common in your sympathies." In her aunt's cottage, Anna knelt before the wooden crucifix on the wall. A single candle cast flickering shadows as she bowed her head in prayer. "Dear Lord," she whispered, "protect him. Let no harm come to Leopold because of me." She touched her stomach gently. "And give me strength to raise this child in your grace." The candle flame danced, sending shadows across the rough walls. Outside, snow began to fall, coating the silent village in white. Anna remained kneeling, her prayers rising with the smoke of the humble candle, her heart aching for the man she'd left behind. The winter sun cast long shadows across the frost-dusted village of Falkenwald as the Dowager Duchess's ornate carriage rolled through the narrow streets. Her annual inspection of the family's estates had brought her to this humble place. Yet something else caught her attention, the way villagers spoke of a young woman named Anna with unmistakable warmth. "The miller's daughter, your grace," her steward explained as the carriage paused near the village square. "She returned some weeks ago, heavy with child, yet still tends to those in need." The Duchess's stern expression remained unchanged, though her sharp eyes missed nothing. Through the carriage window, she watched village life unfold before her. A group of children played near the old well, their worn clothes patched but clean. A woman with a familiar bearing moved among them, her advanced pregnancy evident beneath her simple wool cloak. "Stop the carriage," the Duchess commanded. She sat straighter, observing intently. Anna knelt beside a small girl with tangled hair, gently showing her how to wrap a torn shawl to keep out the bitter wind. Her movements were careful, graceful despite her condition. The Duchess noticed how the children gathered around her, not with the fearful deference shown to nobles, but with genuine affection. From her elevated seat, the Duchess watched as Anna disappeared briefly into the village baker's shop, emerging with a basket of day-old bread. Without ceremony or expectation of praise, she distributed the loaves among the waiting children, ensuring the smallest received their share first. "Most interesting," the Duchess murmured. Her companion, Lady Margaret, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Grace, surely we need not concern ourselves with silence." The Duchess cut her off, her voice sharp but quiet. "I am observing." Throughout the afternoon, the Duchess had her carriage moved to different vantage points in the village. She watched as Anna helped an elderly woman carry water from the well, stopped to examine a farmer's sick goat, and spent an hour mending clothes in the doorway of her aunt's modest cottage. As twilight approached, the Duchess sat in thoughtful silence. Her decades at court had taught her to recognize artifice, to spot those who performed good deeds for show or advantage. Anna's actions carried no such taint. Here was the quiet dignity that the Duchess had found lacking in so many noble-born ladies who sought to curry her favor. "Bring me parchment and ink," she ordered suddenly. Her companions scrambled to comply. The Duchess's quill scratched across the page with decisive strokes. In her distinctive hand, she wrote to her son, "Leopold, I have found what our house has lost. Come at once to Falkenwald, before it is too late. Bring your personal guard, but no courtiers. Make haste. Your mother." She sealed the letter with her ring and summoned her fastest rider. "To the hunting lodge," she commanded. "Ride through the night if you must." Next morning, as the first pale light crept over the horizon, Anna woke to an unusual sound. The frost-hardened lane outside her aunt's cottage rang with the steady rhythm of approaching hooves, not the casual clip-clop of farm horses, but the disciplined march of trained mounts. She rose from her narrow bed, one hand pressed to her swollen belly as she moved to the window. Through the crystalline winter air, she saw a sight that made her heart stop. A column of riders approached the village, their breath and that of their mounts creating clouds of vapor in the cold morning air. Their cloaks bore the colors of the House of Hesse, and at their head, tall and commanding astride his white stallion, rode Prince Leopold himself. Anna stepped back from the window, her hand flying to her throat. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, echoing off the frost-covered buildings of the sleeping village. The prince had come, but for what purpose? To command her silence? To ensure she would make no claims on his family's honor? Through the window, she could see Leopold dismounting, his movements decisive and purposeful. The morning sun caught the silver threads in his cloak, making them glitter like the frost itself. Behind him, his guards formed a protective circle, their presence transforming the humble village street into an extension of the royal court. The hoofbeats had ceased now, replaced by the crunch of boots on frozen ground. Anna stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding, as footsteps approached her aunt's cottage door. The winter sunrise painted the village square in hues of rose and gold as Prince Leopold dismounted his white stallion. Villagers emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion of horses and guards. They gathered in hushed clusters, watching as their prince strode purposefully toward Anna, who stood trembling in her aunt's doorway. To everyone's astonishment, Leopold dropped to one knee before her, his fine cloak pooling in the frost-covered dirt. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. "Anna of Falkenwald," he declared, his voice carrying across the square. "You are neither my servant nor a scandal to be hidden. You are the woman who taught me that true nobility dwells not in titles, but in the heart." Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks as Leopold took her work-roughened hands in his. "Your child will be my child," he vowed. "I ask only for the honor of being your husband if you will have me." Anna's voice trembled. "But the court, your inheritance, mean nothing without you," Leopold finished firmly. Pastor Elias stepped forward from the crowd, his weathered face bright with joy. Leopold turned to him, still holding Anna's hands. "I request a special marriage license, if you would grant it." As if Providence itself had arranged events, a messenger galloped into the square, bearing urgent news. Count Frederick's schemes had finally collapsed under the weight of his own treachery. His mounting debts to Jewish moneylenders and a string of broken promises to merchants' daughters had come to light. The disgraced count had fled in the night, leaving behind evidence of his plots against Leopold. The banns were read 3 times in the village church, and on a crisp spring morning, nobles and villagers alike crowded the small sanctuary. Anna, radiant in a gown of cream-colored silk, walked down the aisle to meet Leopold before the altar. The Dowager Duchess herself had insisted on providing the bride's dress, a silent but clear signal of her blessing. As spring turned to summer, the palace gardens bloomed with new life and hope. Anna walked the gravel paths beside Leopold, their infant daughter cradled in her arms. The little one had her mother's quiet strength and her father's gentle eyes. Behind them, the Dowager Duchess followed, her stern countenance softened by her granddaughter's occasional coos. Most remarkable of all was the change in the palace itself. Servants no longer scurried along walls or kept their eyes downcast. Noble ladies chatted easily with kitchen maids about recipes and children. Young lords sought the wisdom of old gardeners about the timing of plantings. Sunlight filtered through the blossoming apple trees, casting dappled shadows on the family below. The light caught the silver threads in Leopold's coat, the pearls in the Duchess's hair, and the simple gold band on Anna's finger, all equally bright, all equally precious. If today's story reminded you of the quiet strength of love, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow we'll meet right here, where love speaks softly and stays.